Imagine in the heart of Silicon Valley, the literal engine of global innovation. The streets are lined with late-model SUVs and clean sedans, the kind of vehicles you expect to see in a middle-class driveway. But if you look closer, through the condensation fog windows and past the improvised sunshades, you will see a different reality. Inside these vehicles are not commuters taking a nap, but full-time professionals, teachers, and service workers who have transformed their back seats into bedrooms. This is the silent, mobile vanguard of the working homeless. As of early 2026, an estimated 1.2 million employed Americans are now living in their cars, vans, or RVs. They are not the face of homelessness you were taught to expect. They are people with corporate badges, gym memberships for showers, and direct deposits that simply cannot keep up with a housing market that has detached from human reality. This is not a story of personal failure, but a systemic collapse where a full-time paycheck no longer guarantees a front door. In 2026, the car has become the new American middle-class home, and for over 1 million people, the only thing standing between them and the pavement is 4 wheels and a locked door. The rise of vehicular residency in 2026 is the byproduct of what economists are calling the Great Housing Reset. For decades, the American social contract suggested that if you worked 40 hours a week, you could afford a basic roof over your head. That contract was effectively shredded by January 2026. Data from the start of the year reveals a terrifying mathematical imbalance. While the United States adds approximately 60,000 new shelter beds annually, over 600,000 people are entering homelessness for the first time every single year. This 10-to-1 deficit means that for the vast majority of the newly displaced, traditional shelters are not even an option. Consequently, the vehicle has transitioned from a mode of transportation to a last-resort survival pod. These 1.2 million individuals represent a demographic shift where the working poor now includes those with moderate incomes. In states like California, the median home price has surged toward $850,000, requiring an annual income of over $200,000 just to qualify for a mortgage. In a state where the median household income hovers around $90,000, the California dream has become a literal impossibility for half the population, pushing them toward the curbside. This crisis is being exacerbated by the final expiration of pandemic-era federal funding. In previous years, programs like the state and local fiscal recovery fund provided a $350 billion cushion that allowed cities to expand rental assistance and temporary housing. But by 2026, those funds have completely dried up, creating what policy experts describe as a perfect fiscal storm. The removal of this safety net has coincided with a period of affordability erosion in the automotive sector itself. While people are living in their cars, they are finding it harder to keep them. The average monthly payment for a used car in 2026 has hit $529, often with interest rates exceeding 11.54% for those with subprime credit. This creates a cruel paradox. The very vehicle serving as a person's home is often a financial noose. If a worker misses a payment, they don't just lose their transportation, they lose their shelter. With over 2.2 million vehicles repossessed nationwide in the last year, a figure projected to climb toward 3 million by the end of 2026. The working homeless are living in a constant state of high-stakes survival. In cities like San Francisco and San Jose, the response to this crisis has shifted from social support to aggressive enforcement. A new wave of municipal ordinances has effectively criminalized the act of living in a vehicle. San Francisco recently passed a policy banning large vehicles from parking on any city street for more than 2 hours, a move that specifically targets the RV dwellers of the Bay Area. San Jose has designated 38 tollway zones, where since the start of 2026, over 1,175 cars and RVs have been cleared. For the residents of these vehicles, a tow notice is an eviction from the only property they have left. The trauma of these sweeps is profound. When a vehicle is towed, the inhabitant often loses their clothes, their documents, and their sense of safety in a single afternoon. Despite these crackdowns, many residents simply circle the block and return, because as many outreach workers report, there's literally nowhere else for them to go. The psychology of this new lifestyle has given birth to a subculture known as stealth camping. For the working professional living in a car, The goal is total invisibility. This is a dance between physics and humility, where the individual must learn to blend into environments that the public naturally ignores. They park in boring spaces, industrial buffer zones, utility corridors, or the back corners of 24-hour gym lots, and adhere to strict light and sound discipline. No white light, no noise, and no visual footprint. They arrive late and disappear before sunrise. This level of hypervigilance is exhausting and contributes to a life expectancy for the unhoused of just 50 years, compared to 77 for the average American. The mental toll of pretending to be a normal member of society by day while hiding like a fugitive by night is creating a secondary crisis of mental health among the employed class. Safe parking programs have emerged as a vital but insufficient lifeline. Organizations like Safe Parking LA and Jewish Family Service in San Diego provide secure lots where residents can sleep without the fear of a 2 a.m. knock from police. However, the demand is staggering. Safe Parking LA has received over 11,000 inquiries since its inception, yet can only permit about 3,000 vehicles. In San Diego, the Regional Task Force on Homelessness reported a 17% increase in families seeking such services in just the last 12 months. These programs offer more than just a parking spot. They provide access to bathrooms, Wi-Fi for work, and case management to help transition people back into permanent housing. Yet, even with a 47% success rate in some programs, the sheer volume of new entries into the system is overwhelming the available infrastructure. The economic backdrop of 2026 adds another layer of dread to the narrative. We are witnessing a massive structural shift in the U.S. corporate workforce. In the first quarter of 2026 alone, giants like Amazon, Intel, and Microsoft announced over 165,000 job cuts. These are not just blue-collar positions. They are middle management and tech roles being optimized by AI and automation. As these high-skilled workers lose their income in a high-rent environment, the pipeline into vehicular homelessness is widening. This white-collar purge is unique to 2026 as companies trade human peril for AI infrastructure. For the worker who is barely hanging on with a $100,000 salary in a city, where the median rent is $3,500, a single layoff notice is a fast track to the front seat of their car. Geographically, the crisis is concentrating in blue states with high cost of living, but the escape to other regions is proving to be a trap. Florida, once the promised land for those fleeing high taxes, now leads the nation in foreclosure rates, with 1 in every 230 housing units facing a filing. This is driven by a sunshine tax of skyrocketing insurance premiums and property taxes that have made even the Sunbelt unaffordable for the working class. In Texas, the implementation of Senate Bill 38, or the Rocket Docket, has accelerated the eviction process to as little as 10 days, leaving families with almost no time to secure new housing before they are forced into their vehicles. The reality of 2026 is that there is no geographical sanctuary. The imbalance between wages and the cost of shelter is a national contagion. The visual evidence of this collapse is found in the retail graveyards of America. As major chains like Macy's and GameStop close hundreds of locations in January 2026, the empty parking lots of these dead malls have become unofficial transit hubs for the vehicle-dwelling population. These abandoned commercial spaces serve as a haunting metaphor for the 2026 economy. The cathedrals of consumption are empty, while the people who once shopped in them are sleeping in the parking lot. The retail apocalypse has removed the entry-level jobs that many of the working homeless once relied on, while simultaneously providing the only open space where they can hide in plain sight. For families with children, the working homeless crisis is a generational tragedy. In San Diego, school districts are coordinating with safe parking programs to provide classroom trailers where homeless students can do their homework. The number of families actively served by the regional homelessness system has spiked, with nearly 3,000 families currently in the system, a 17% increase year over year. These children are growing up in a world where home is a backseat and stability is a temporary parking permit. The long-term impact on their education and mental health is a cost that the United States will be paying for decades to come. Legislatively, there is some movement, but it feels like a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. The Naomi Schwartz and Susan Rose Safe Parking Act of 2025 was introduced to authorize the use of federal emergency grants for overnight parking facilities. While this represents a rare federal recognition of the crisis, it does not address the root cause, the lack of deeply affordable housing. As long as the supply of housing remains restricted by overly complex building codes and zoning laws, which Jerusalem Dempsey of the Atlantic calls the root cause of the crisis, the number of people living in cars will continue to grow. In many jurisdictions, traditional huts, tents, and even living in your own car remain illegal, classified as substandard housing and subject to removal. As we move through 2026, the term homeless is being redefined. It is no longer a word that describes a small, marginalized group of people with substance abuse or mental health issues. In 2026, homeless describes a nurse who just finished a 12-hour shift, the Amazon driver who delivered your packages today, and the substitute teacher who is educating your children. These 1.2 million Americans are the ghost and machine of the American economy. They are essential to the functioning of our cities, yet they are being systematically pushed out of the very communities they serve. The working homeless crisis of 2026 is a warning that the American dream has become a luxury item. When 1.2 million people who do everything right, work hard, pay taxes, and stay employed cannot afford a bathroom and a kitchen, the social contract is no longer functioning. The car, once the symbol of American freedom and upward mobility, has become a cage of necessity. It is a mobile fortress against a world that has become too expensive to live in. As the repo truck circle and the city ordinances tighten, the million-person caravan of the working poor continues to move through the night, looking for a safe place to park, a place that feels like home, even if it only has 4 wheels and a steering wheel. Ultimately, the data from January 2026 suggests that we are at a tipping point, with the national unemployment rate hitting a 4-year high of 4.6% and over 7.8 million Americans seeking work. The pressure on the housing market is only set to intensify. The Great Housing Reset is not just changing where we live. It is changing who we are as a nation. A country where 1 million workers live in cars is a country that has decided that human shelter is a privilege, not a right. The question for the remainder of 2026 is whether we will continue to tow the problem away, or if we will finally address the math of a broken system before the back seats of America are the only bedrooms left. The headlights are on, the engine is idling, and for 1.2 million Americans, the road is the only home they have.